Yes, in the meantime, I would like to introduce Seenaa Jimjimo, who is the Executive Director of the Oromo Legacy Leadership and Advocacy Association, who will be delivering our second keynote here today. And yes, I'll get that set up.
Thank you, Spencer. To all distinguished speakers, delegates, and attendees of ICERM 2020, I wish you all good afternoon to all those who dedicated themselves to this mission of this institution to promote peacekeeping, conflict resolution. It is my honor to speak before you. I want to take this opportunity to talk about the issue that I'm almost certain that you've never heard of it, and the issue that have been ignored in a policymaker circle, and indeed I think it's going to be unique to this conference. I've divided my presentation in two segments. Part will be in a PowerPoint, and the other part will be, I'll talk about it, just, let's see if I can, okay. So it is, so I'll use the PowerPoint to kind of give you the background, the history, very short time. Right now it's about 17 after, and then the conflict in Oromia, ethnic and religious persecution. So these are, okay. So Oromia and Oromo people, let's see, how do you use this? The light doesn't work, or it does, okay. Oh, I don't see, but anyway, the yellow area is where the Oromia, you can see is Oromia. And Ethiopia is currently in a federal state, as kind of talked about it yesterday. This is when this picture is a little bit old, so it's about 9 regions. Right now it's about 10 or 11 regions there. So Oromia region is the yellow one. So, and they hold over 60% of roughly Ethiopian population. But give and take, the USCIS database have it about 34% of Ethiopian population out of 120 million are Oromos. And about 57% of Nile water comes from Oromia, and Oromia food crops accounts for about 56% of the country contribution. So roughly the religion, they practice 3 main religions, Christianity, Islam, and so the history, the making of Ethiopia is much complex, but I'm not going to get into that because we don't have a lot of time. Let me see. So I don't know if anybody have seen, and I can't really see, I want to use the light, but I can't see it. You have seen this. So this is the ancient Ethiopia, and the word Ethiopia it's used in the central part of Africa, if you can see. And you probably have heard of what Ethiopia means. The current Ethiopia and the old Abyssinia is not really the same. In fact, Ethiopia came to an existence, the name, only after, in 1930s, after World League of Nations. Because when Ethiopia was introduced to League of Nations, and it was the only African country that was, in the League of Nations, and it was Abyssinia. It was only when it was introduced, they changed the name to Ethiopia. So Ethiopia, the current map of Ethiopia you see, came to an existence only late 19th century. And if you guys remember a little bit, in 1884, there was a Berlin Conference that happened, and then there was a colonization of Africa. So this is the imperial rule from 1889. This is the modern Ethiopia. I'll be more than happy to share the PowerPoint of this for the sake of it. So it's Abyssinian, I'll talk about it. The relationship between the southern part of Ethiopians and the northern part of Ethiopians is almost like a colonization. So Haile Selassie, to which a lot of people have heard about it, ruled from 1960 all the way to 74, and then Derg came over and took control of the country from 74 up until 1991. And during this time, there have been a lot of conflict as well. We'll come to, and then 1991 to 2018, there was much conflict going on in the southern part of the country, particularly Oromia. The prime minister came to the power on the back of Oromo protests. From 2014 to 2018, there was a mass protest, Oromo protest that was going on. We, my organization, also work with the U.S. Congress to kind of push the TPLF, EPDRF, led by TPLF, out of power, and Prime Minister Abiy came to power as negotiation, basically to appease the Oromo population who have been protesting. Later on, towards the end, the Amhara also joined that aspect of it. So okay, now we're just gonna go back. Okay, so the conflict in Oromia. My apologies. So the conflict in Oromia, you guys probably have heard of it. In June 29, 2020, the popular singer Hachalu Hundessa was murdered. As a result of that, the whole country was shut down because hundreds of people were killed, thousands of people were arrested, and there was complete chaos in the country. The government could not control, and they ended up shutting down internet for 23 days. And that is a turning point between the current government, the Prime Minister Abiy, and the Oromo people, even though the Prime Minister Abiy came from the Oromia side, or from the Oromo, at least his dad is an Oromo, his mom is an Amhara. Ethiopia, as I talked about a little bit yesterday and today, is a very ethnic and language-based country. So, like, when the Oromos are in power, the Amharas are not happy, the Tigris are not happy. So the Tigrayans before 2018 were in power from 1991 up until 2018. When they left the power because of the push from the Oromos, but the Prime Minister Abiy came to power to kind of appease Oromos, but the violence initially was peaceful from April 2018 up until December 2018. After that, there's been really a conflict. There was been bombing, drone attack in Oromia, but nobody really talked about it until the war broke out in November of 2020, and that was the first time the international community really heard about it. There's been a lot of atrocity of children, women, pregnant men, but the story that I want to talk about is the story of this story happened in December 21st, 2021. Was the persecution of a religious leader. Oromos are both Christian, Muslim, and Waqifata, to which I myself practice Waqifata. Waqifata is indigenous African religion, but they get prosecuted both from the government for being Oromo nationalist and also from other major ethnic religious group. In December 21st, the government came looking for this religious leader based in Karayu. They arrived about 2 cars, and after looking for them for all day, they were in the place of prayer, very separate area, and they come and picked up 41 of them around 5 p.m. that day. After they took them roughly about 10 or so kilometers later, according to the only 1 or 2 survivor, they told them to get off the truck face down. They were on the phone. They can hear talking to somebody on the other end, and looks like somebody from the Capitol, from security force. The instruction was more like execute them. This religious leader. These religious leaders are. It's more of like a U.S. Congress, all of the Congress, because you have the leader. It's like the Congress as well as the executive branch. It's all of them. The military, there was there. The leader of the political angle was there. It is all 41 of them. So there was an instruction to execute them or not to execute them, and they were back. After many hours, they finally start shooting them around 8 p.m. And the survivor, he said he escaped and told that story. Later on, in February of 2020, for the first time, the government admit to the killing of this, and right now they have put 2 local police in custody. What's interesting is this is the only case there's been thousands of people have been killed since the Prime Minister Abiy came to power, and everybody is focused in Tigray, but I'm talking about particularly in Oromia. But the killing of this religious leader was kind of, if 50 Christians or sheikhs from the Muslim community were killed, a lot of news would have, a lot of uprising would have came. But because these are such a small minority religious followers, there was not much noise. Nevertheless, some member of the parliament, they came out and spoke about that the execution of this religious leader was ordered at the regional government. Okay. I'm told time is okay. So let me talk a little bit about the famine and climate change in Oromia. The issue I've spoken about so far today is far from exacerbated by devastating climate disaster that is impacting the Horn, especially Oromia and other southern parts of Ethiopia. The Horn of Africa has now seen 4 successive years of reduced rainfall. The UN from April data says that 3.3 people were in a desperate need of food in April of about 5-6 months ago. Our internet data that we got, that some of them got leaked from the government, in just one zone, over 500,000 people were in a desperate food need. Based on that estimation, it's over 10 million in just Oromia alone. Over 10 million people were in need of food, but really nobody's talking about it. The climate impact is serious, and there's a lot of other data that came out from different organizations. And for the sake of time, what I want to say here is government intentionally don't want people to talk about hunger, about the economy. So they are inflicting conflict in every part of the region. That way people are focused more about putting down this fire, putting down that fire, rather than talking the hunger. And the international community have completely failed to talk about the famine that is looming. Probably, according to the local community leaders who we talk to, it's going to be never. UN says 4 rainy seasons have fallen, and then 40 years drought. But they're saying that this have never happened in history. So our call, OLLAA, the organization I lead to action, is ultimately the Oromo Legacy Leadership and Advocacy Association is urging that the road to peace in the country goes to Oromia, home to 60% of the population out of 120 million. It is that the concrete measures are taken. It is essential that these concrete measures are taken. First, there must be immediate end to the violence in Oromia and by all parties. Second, provide urgent food and other humanitarian aid in all parts of Ethiopia where communities are on the verge of starvation. Third, expand the current UN-led. Right now, as you guys know, there is a UN-led investigation that is taking place in the country, but mainly they have focused on the northern part of the country so far. So we urge that not just in Oromia, but focusing throughout the country. Ethiopia has experienced violence, serious violence. Fourth, we are calling the international community to use their diplomatic tool to pressure the Ethiopian government to end the pain and suffering of all people, not just Oromos, by all parties. This diplomatic tool could include withholding funding, financial support to Ethiopia, who are major beneficiary to Western nation. Fifth, the international community, the intergovernmental organizations such as the UN, should facilitate the national dialogue that is genuine, neutral, and inclusive to all parties. We believe that the restoration of human rights and the civil rights for Oromo people, being the largest ethnic group, it is essential without including the Oromos, who are the largest and it being ignored right now. The conflict, focusing on just one part of it, is like looking for just putting a bandage on a wound. In conclusion, before I finish today, I would like to touch on some of the good work that we have done. I'm pretty sure, and at least so far, every time I meet people, nobody have heard of Oromo. When we say Oromo, whether they are 40% by some base USCIS for political purpose, because if you look at 1960, 1990s data, and I'm a writer myself, it puts Oromo at 60% of the Ethiopian population. 60% of 120 million people is at least 60 plus million. But nobody have heard of them. Nobody talk about them. There is human rights violations since the state of Ethiopia was created. It is essential that people put such a majority group are also not neglected just by focusing on minority. My organization is one of the very few organizations highlighting this. We work with the U.S. Congress, and we have done. We work with the international, including the UN, to amplify the voice of Oromo people. It is essential that the international community, really understand holistic issue rather than just focusing only on one angle. And it has been my pleasure to speak to you, to speak at ICERM conference. I hope this conversation will continue, and we talk about really bigger approach issue, not just really looking at the symptom, but the source of all the problem. Thank you so much.